Welcome to the Board Game Snobs podcast. Critically harsh reviews with a touch of class.
Partire.
What does that mean? Is that Italian?
It's supposed to be.
Oh.
Better be Italian with that. If you're going to come in with that accent, it better be Italian.
Apparently, according to Google Translate, that is go.
Google Translate's never led us wrong.
No, not with its extremely literal translations of everything.
Right, I'm a fan of Bing, but if you can't go with Bing, then Google Translate's a good one. If you know, or Ask Jeeves.
And now, Gabi, you know it's important that anytime you have a guest on the show, you do not allow them to introduce themselves. You don't just say, tell us about yourself. You have
we started?
Them.
Have we officially started, or is this still the preliminary?
No, this is it. We come in guns blazing, And so on this episode, we have one, and it's important that
we like to entrap our guests by making them think we have not started.
Right. That way we kind of get you on the hot mic. We recorded everything you said earlier about Roy and Tom.
Oh,
this is our gotcha journalism.
Yes. Yes. So it's important that all this information, when you introduce a guest, be correct. And so we have on our podcast today, Michael Francis DiLisio.
No, you're already off.
No, just trust me. Mike grew up in a small Indiana farm town before going to college, putting himself through college, waiting tables and working as an erotic dancer, eventually fulfilling his dream of becoming a high school teacher. Where he
Did you say an erotic dancer or a neurotic dancer?
Why not both?
The neurotic erotic dancer.
Yes. You can give me dollar bills, but make sure they're crisp.
He gets them and immediately irons them out.
Correct.
Will you please give me quarters that are already pre-rolled?
And they all have to be facing the same direction as well.
Yes.
And that was actually the name of the place you worked, Heads or Tails.
You'll flip. All right.
Oh, yes. Before becoming a high school teacher, wasn't it? And you taught you taught history and sociology and something else that was mildly
I like how you're asking me right now to clarify details in the scope of saying that I came there from an erotic dancer background. But yes, I actually was a social studies teacher, U.S. world history and sociology. So continue there. Continue. I want to hear where my life goes next.
So, and I'm unclear as to your bio, whether you lost your job, retired, or at some point in time, you decided to join the Dice Tower Mafia. And you moved from the small town somewhere in Cornfield in Indiana down to now the Dice Tower headquarters at the very tip of the Florida area. And now you work for Mr. Vassal.
Okay. So yes, going along with your
Did we get anything wrong?
Well, really, the only thing that you got right was the exotic dancing. Everything else was all completely nonsense. But so yes, I am not from Indiana. You know, I was living there for I think a little over 20 years. So I was there for a good chunk of time. But teaching high school, formulating the impressionable young minds of America's youth. And I had a golden opportunity to come to, as you said, the tip of Florida. And so I jumped at that opportunity and grabbed it with both hands and got a big handful of Florida.
And in terms of that, you do video editing and content creating for the Dice Tower. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the Dice Tower or your content, what exactly type of content do you produce?
Jerry, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with the book, the notebook that you have there. I think it's a Moleskine journal, is it not? Is that an official?
Oh yes,
journal?
I keep one of these. Now we're not even to the good stuff yet.
Okay, I believe it's even embossed, but okay, I don't want to get fixated on that because we'll be here all day. But
did you say moleskin?
Moleskine, Moleskine. That's only the best of the journals that you'll find at Target in the stationery, or Staples also I think has Moleskine. They are actually nice, but anyway, so yes, my official title I suppose would be a video editor / content creator at the Dice Tower Incorporated LLC, reserved, trademarked. Yes.
Do you find you do your best content creation when in the restroom?
Well, it's the longest lasting. I don't know that I have a particular place that I do my best content creation, Gabi. I like to feel like I'm a versatile individual. Out of doors, I can create some stunning content within the cramped confines of a restroom, or as I like to call them, the facilities. I've also created some fantastic content there, but I'm versatile. I'm like a Swiss Army knife, Gabi. You never know what you're going to get when you flip me open.
Gotcha.
That's one thing I've always appreciated about the Dice Tower content. It is quite regular.
It's regular. It's regular.
In terms of the hierarchy, now we've had several of our fans ask this.
Okay.
In terms of the hierarchy of the Dice Tower,
yes.
we know that Mr. Vassal, of course, is the godfather of the Dice Tower. Right
Correct.
below him, we would assume that Z would be the next in line. So if something, now this is just theoretical, if something were to happen, God forbid,
sure,
to Mr. Vassal and then to Mr. Garcia, who is the next in line, the successor of the Dice Tower throne?
Okay. So
would that be
guess,
you, Roy? What?
Oh, no, not me. Not only am I the last person hired, but I'm also the one clearly with the least amount of skill, charisma, and talent. But you'd have Tom.
And piercings.
And, well, no. Are you kidding now? The least amount of piercings, you think? I'd like you to make a guess
apparently,
now. Jerry, I'd like you to make a guess.
You never saw him dance.
I would like you to make a guess now at the amount of piercings that I have. Now, I want to make it clear, we're not talking about piercings that I currently use, because right now, I don't want to give anything away, but I don't have anything currently actively pierced. But I still have holes in my body that could accept piercing objects if needed. So I'd like you to make a guess at how many piercings.
I want to cut that particular phrase in just a certain way.
Well, I know that in the state of...
he said, I do have holes in my body that can be...
that can accept pierceable items, yes.
Well, I do know that in the state of Indiana, it's illegal for a school teacher to have more than 7 piercings. So I'm going to go with 7.
Okay. No, you're incorrect. You are incorrect. I have 4 piercings.
You have 4 piercings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that was of interest.
Mark that down in the moleskin, Jerry. Mark that one down in the moleskin.
It is. It's going in. It's going in right next to Dan Hughes 28.
I completely lost track. So
ahead,
who's the hierarchy, right? The hierarchy.
Yes. It's very important.
So I think I think you have Tom clearly. Then you have Z. I'm going to go in a. Well, I would say Eric, but maybe not, because Eric is really, he's got his own kind of main gig of doing the voiceover work and the audio books, and he's part-time. He's been with the Dice Tower for a very long amount of time, so he's got that status of time. But if I, keeping Eric out of the mix, then I would say Roy.
That's the plan, isn't it? Take him out of the mix.
I can't confirm or deny that there are plans. You've got Roy. Then you have the people that come and mow the lawn every 2 weeks. Okay. Then you've got, wait. Kenny's got to get in there above them. Kenny, then Roy, then the lawn guys, then the stray cats in the back. then I think I'm up. If the Stray Cats don't make it, then I think it's my turn to shine.
Wow, that's disappointing. Speaking of Mr. Summoner, and this is just a side.
Summoner, sir.
That's what
Summoner.
I said. We kind of had to. We'll take a brief jaunt and talk about Eric for a brief moment. My wife,
Okay.
who occasionally listens, she doesn't listen to our podcast, but when we guest star on other people's podcasts, she likes to listen. She listened to the podcast that Gabi and I were on, which was the Sporadically Board, which we should mention for our listeners. Sporadically Board is a bi-monthly podcast that Dan Hughes and Mike occasionally. It's more about two men discussing their lives more than it is about board games. But anyway,
Absolutely. Yes.
She listened to Sporadically Board, and several things jumped out at her. One, I don't want to choose her words for her, but I think she described the sound, the voices of the podcast as being very sensual.
Oh,
yes. She feels that Gabi and I both have excellent radio voices, but she was shocked to hear your voice, and she says earlier just this day, she says, "I think Mike." She just calls you Mike.
Sure. We have that kind of we're on that level, sure.
Right. Yeah. That you might have the best voice that she's heard.
He was Big D in the club.
Right.
Heads and tails.
Right. So I she claimed that you might have the best voice in board game podcasting, and I took umbrage with that. And I said, "Honey, you don't listen." Yes. I said, "You've never heard Eric summoning her." And so I found a video of Eric and played it for her. And then back to back at our kitchen table was playing a video of Eric and then of you and then of Eric and then of you. And she outright said that it is hands down Mike, as she calls you, has the best voice. And so I've often felt that Eric's silky, smooth baritone was the most formidable voice in podcasting. But so my question is, what do you do to prepare yourself for a podcast, both vocally, mentally, and emotionally?
Well, it's a process, Jerry. Let me tell you, it's a multi-step process. But before we get to that, first of all, this is a great honor, and I hope that you've also taken note of this in your moleskin that this has been determined at this point. But if there's one thing I could say about Eric, you know what word that I associate with Mr. Eric Summerer? Are you ready for the word?
I am.
Okay. Eric is mellifluous. Huh?
Mellifluous.
Yes. The password is mellifluous. Yes.
Mellifluous.
I think Eric is mellifluous. And I cannot accept the mantle that your wife has so graciously bestowed upon me. I think that Eric clearly has not only, the voice to beat all voices in board game media. He, first of all, makes a living at it. But I would also throw a dark horse into this mix. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Meeple Overboard podcast, and we've had one of the co-hosts of that podcast on the Sporadically Board podcast before. His name is Chris Yee. He also, now don't get me wrong, my voice is clearly better than Chris's voice, but
heads and tails above the rest.
Heads or tails, cycling back to the strip club. No, exotic dance club, but
erotic dance club.
You're erotic, yes.
Exotic, you break out the tigers.
Exotic is the tigers. Erotic and neurotic is when I get on stage. But Chris Yee also is a contender for voice of the decade, of the century, of the millennium. I wish I could say, Jerry, that I had an actual routine. I wish I could say that I prepared, but this is just something that comes to me naturally, I suppose. I just open up my vocal cords and let my larynx do its thing.
Well,
please, can you repeat that again?
Well, that was more of a groan of.
He heard that plenty at the Heads and Tails nightclub.
Well, that was just me expressing my. I appreciate your humility, but we all know deep down that you are slowly climbing the ladder of the Dice Tower conglomerate, and no doubt, as if it weren't for your age, which obviously, as
Sure.
you know, because
Sure.
that's you know, you have to be able to appeal to a younger generation, and I think
Sure.
that's where Roy comes in to play.
Right. Right.
And
Roy is our
I really-
pandering to the youth. Sure. He's our chance at pandering to the youth. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure that there's a certain type of fan or viewer that really do appreciate Roy's opinion, as there's a certain demographic that they're going for with you. Like,
Right.
with Dan Hughes type, everybody
The
has
nursing homes.
Right. There are many not demented. There are many seniors
Sure.
that enjoy playing board games, and I think having a Dan Rather type figure to
Dan
provide
Rather.
them with
Okay,
board game news.
I'm just glad you didn't go with Walter Cronkite. Okay, go ahead.
No. I toned it down a little bit. But you are the greatest generation. I'll just say that right away.
Well,
Is
Sure.
Order from Chaos still a thing? Y'all haven't put nothing out in a while.
yeah, it's rough because that's one that's getting kind of lost in the shuffle. We just recorded our last Sporadically Board podcast with Matthew, and part of us were saying, should we just do an Order from Chaos instead? But we really wanted to. We hadn't talked to each other in a while, and so we wanted to have the more free form, longer one. But no, it's still a thing. We just haven't. We're all kind of crazy busy, and that seems to be the one that's lowest on the rung, so to speak. But we enjoy doing it, and it does seem like a few people like it. So I don't know.
At least 15.
Yeah, I liked the Matthew Jude last one y'all did.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
It's hard. Joking aside, if I may be serious for a moment, may I? May I be serious for a moment?
You may.
Okay,
we'll allow it.
Look fair. When we got done with that particular episode, I can speak for myself, but I do feel like we all kind of had a similar thing. We were worried that it was kind of somber in a way. It was not sad or anything, but
No.
it was just, it wasn't kind of like our normal vibe that we have. It was good. It was positive, but it was really more of like a reflective. Maybe reflective is a better word than somber. We were just kind of all in a reflective mood. And so I was worried afterwards that people were going to be a little bit like, oh, that was fine. It was good. But it didn't have kind of the humor that we normally come with, at least consistently, or at least that we try to. And but so I've heard a few people that have said that they enjoyed it. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I like y'all said before, like a nice mix. I mean, you can't be hilarious all the time.
Unless your name is Jerry, sure.
That's right. And I took from that particular episode that we desperately need to find Mr. Jude a significant other.
Well,
if only he would take off his hat.
Correct. Because he has a lustrous head of hair. I want to be clear. He's not hiding anything to be ashamed of below that knit beanie. He has a lustrous head of hair. But he has made it clear on a number of occasions that he would like the company of a significant other. So the problem, I think, is that he's a very busy young man, and that he doesn't have a lot of time in his life for things outside of what he's doing to try to make a name for himself in this wacky business
He doesn't
we call
have
board gaming.
He doesn't have the time for love and tenderness.
Gabi, it's sad to say, but yeah, you may be right. You may be right there.
It takes time to develop a long-lasting relationship, and I would like to kind of breach into that area. How did you and Dan become a couple?
So I was going to come up with a joke answer, but I'll be serious. I'll answer it seriously. So Dan, one of the things that I think Dan is remarkably good at is finding people.
Long pause.
No, well, because I want to. One might, yeah.
He's thinking.
No, I'm just trying to think of the best way to put this. Dan is really good at kind of finding people that have a unique voice. And I'm not, the reason why I was hesitating was because the implication here is that I have a unique voice, and that's not really what I'm getting at. But what I'm getting at is that Dan likes to promote people that a lot of people aren't talking about. He'll hear somebody, he'll see somebody that he thinks has something there, and he'll mention it. And then oftentimes that person will get discovered by other people. And you're like, yeah, you know, he was right. This person really is good. This is something that's interesting. And so I only bring that up because the way we got together was he had seen me on Board Game Breakfast. He'd seen me do some stuff on the Dice Tower. And he asked if I wanted to be a guest on This Game is Broken. And so, you know, I loved This Game is Broken at the time. And so I said, sure, I'd be thrilled to. And I came up with a stupid round called Playing With Yourself. You have to be careful of the pause there, about solo gaming, where it was a whole thing about innuendo. It was either solo gaming or euphemism, right? And so I found solo games that sounded, you know, remotely dirty and played that round, and it went over really well. And so I came back on like another 3 or 4 times and just became friends with Dan through that. And then when he decided that he wanted to move on from This Game is Broken, he and I were already friends at that point. We had actually met at Dice Tower Con, so we had met in person, and we talked outside of the realm of podcasting and just had become friends. And I had told him that I had an idea for a podcast that I was going to do. And so we started, you know, he's like, oh, what's it about? And so I kind of gave him my ideas, which was nothing like what we ended up doing. And, you know, he said, well, hey, if you're ever interested in doing something, let me know. And that's really how it started. We just, the Sporadically Board idea, not surprisingly, came very quickly because it's almost a Seinfeld thing where they say, you know, it's a show about nothing. Sporadically Board, I think, is a podcast about 2 distinct personalities and particular ideals that thankfully have resonated with, you know, a small group of people. And the idea being that we'll record it when we feel compelled to record. We'll try to do it with the spirit of enjoyment and enjoying each other's time and company. And my favorite compliments that I get from people is that when they say, well, it sounds like I'm just listening to 2 friends talking and I'm at the table too. You know, that's the vibe we're going for. And I think you guys have a very, very similar thing. And you were doing it before us. As much as I like to joke otherwise, you know, you were doing it before us, although I hadn't heard you before Dan brought you guys up. So.
Right. And I appreciate very much that you have stuck with Dan despite your rocketing to fame in the Dice Tower network.
It's called paying it forward. Paying it forward.
Right. A lesser man would have ditched any, what's the term? Excess baggage. And
I like the term
but
anchor, but excess baggage works too. Sure.
But now with Dan's, I don't want to turn the attention towards me, but since I have inspired Dan to become a designer and design Core Quest with his daughter, I look forward to the time for which you get to review Core Quest on the Dice Tower. It would be a nice.
Look, no one is looking forward to that more than me, Jerry. I have played it on Tabletop Simulator, and you know, I've already discussed the massive first player advantage. But other than that, I think that there's some design notes that, and the thing is, I don't even want to perpetuate that joke because I don't know if you guys have had this problem. You say something just flippantly as a joke on a podcast, right? And it turns out, oh yeah, that's kind of funny. And then it becomes something that takes on a life of its own, right? And so I just don't want there to be this situation where there's these people making jokes about Core Quest legitimately having a first player advantage. The reason why I thought that was funny was because it's a cooperative game and you can't have a first player advantage, right? But I don't want misinformation to get out there. But anyway, I am very much looking forward to reviewing it. Although I don't know that I can. If I'm being very honest, I don't know if I could review it.
Well, I understand because I recall I remember when you had a sack that was full of mail and various other objects for which you no longer have.
Sure.
And as for making a joke and it sticking, we one time brought on we brought Enrique on our podcast one time, and now we even have him on sporadically, and he has a cult following, is what I would describe it. Yes. He has an actual fan club of sleeveless fedora wearing miscreants.
Sure.
Our fan base, our fan base actually had some questions directed towards you that they don't ask, they actually demand that you answer.
Demand, sure. I appreciate the enthusiasm.
It's very odd. Well, our fan base is much more refined, I think, than yours.
Oh, okay.
I don't mean that in a harsh way. I just mean that in a factual way.
In a factual way. Uh-huh.
One of the questions that was asked is, how does Tom take his coffee? Do you bring it to him in the office, or does he make it does it make you bring it to his home? And do you perform a playful component spill when those are air quotes, component spill, when you hand it to him?
Fascinating question. Let me answer this question with a story, and it comes back to my time as a world history teacher. In the Palace of Versailles, in France, Louis XIV, the Sun King, and now I'm paranoid that I'm getting the wrong Louis, because there were a lot of Louis in France. I think it was Louis XIV, the Sun King. He would have a whole host of attendants. Every morning he'd wake up and it would be almost a ceremony, right? And the attendants were not expected to look in King Louis's eyes, and you couldn't knock on the door. You had to scratch on the door to ask for entry into the parlor. And there were attendants that were, vying to have the honor of cleaning King Louis's chamber pot and et cetera. So I like to think of myself as one of Tom's attendance, right? And so the coffee ritual is one that I'd like to go into detail about, but I don't know that we have time. Your podcasts are typically shorter than ours. So the short answer is that Tom doesn't drink coffee.
What is his drink of choice?
My drink of choice?
No, Tom's.
Oh, as far as...
Is he a water man?
I do know he likes a good hot chocolate. He does like a good hot chocolate. What else have I seen Tom drink? Honestly, I think I've seen him drink maybe tea, like iced tea before. Yeah, I think I've seen him drink iced tea, water, and hot chocolate. I do believe that's the trifecta of beverages.
Do you get tired of people asking Dice Tower questions at you all the time?
I don't necessarily get tired. No, because it's still, keep in mind, I've still been here for less than a year, and it's still pretty surreal to me that that's my job. So I will tell you, again, I'm trying to inject a little bit of I never know when to be serious in answering these questions or not, but in a small dose of seriousness here. When I first started working at the Dice Tower, I was very sensitive and concerned when we would have these types of discussions on Sporadically Board, right? People would joke and they had no ill intentions at all. And I was really sensitive. I was really paranoid that I was going to get fired. Right. Or offend, because I didn't know Tom very well at that point. And I still, it's not like we haven't known each other, closely for decades, but I feel much more comfortable now that Tom knows who I am and knows that I don't have any ill intentions. And so these types of questions don't bother me. But at first, I was really worried about answering these types of questions because I didn't know quite what the dynamic was there. At the Dice Tower, we have a lot of... people don't take themselves very seriously there. And that's one of the things I appreciate about that job and the people that I work with.
Well, that's good to know. How did you get Sam Healy fired?
Well, look, this was again, much like the other things we've talked about. This was a process, Jerry. This doesn't happen overnight. This was a process because not only did I have to get him fired, I had to get him to the other end of the country. Look, Washington State and Florida are on opposite ends of this. Let's keep Alaska out of the mix because everybody knows that Alaska is not a real state. Same with Hawaii. But basically on the opposite ends of the country, right? And so, look, I can't get into it, Jerry, because there's an NDA involved. But there was a process, let me tell you.
Well, Cody Snonengard, one of our
I know
fans,
Cody.
asks.
I know Cody.
No,
Cody.
Yes, Cody.
I know Cody. And
yes.
Cody. Yeah, he's Cody when you meet him in person. Cody online.
All right. What does working for the Dice Tower look like day to day? And do you have set schedules, or do you shift from project to project at the whims of others?
Oh, I'm at the whims. No, it's a little bit more regulated than I think you might think. It's a regular schedule in that it's generally Monday to Friday. Now, every so often I'll have a couple of things I need to do over the weekend, but usually nothing of any real consequence time-wise. But generally speaking, I get there to work, and this is just because I want to. I get there around 8:15, and then I leave around 5. But as far as the day-to-day schedule, there are certain things that I am responsible for every week that I know I'm going to be doing every week, right? I know that now I'm going to be doing crowd surfing every week with Z and Tom. That's a live show we do on Wednesdays. So I know that on Tuesdays, Tom's going to send us the links of the Kickstarters we're looking at that week. I look at those. I, watch the videos. I kind of make little notes for things I may want to talk about. So I know I'm going to do that. Also on Wednesdays, I know that I'm going to be getting the news ready for Board Game Breakfast Live on Thursday, right? So I know I'm going to be doing that every week. Then I also know that I'm going to be editing the Monday morning Board Game Breakfast and the Week in Review. That's something I do every week. I also have taken on the app reviews that Tom does, like he's doing board game app reviews, and so I'm doing those. Those are things I do every week. And then on top of that, I try to do at least 2 of my own reviews, although I'm not necessarily like contracted. It's not like Tom's telling me you got to get these out. I've kind of made a commitment that I want to get, at least 2 reviews out. We've also started doing these 4-way reviews where the 4 of us, Tom and Z and myself and Roy, will review a game we've all played. So there are certain things I know I'm going to be doing every week. Things I know I'm going to be doing on a relatively regular basis. We now are doing live plays almost every week, and I'm usually in on those too. So I don't know if that answers Cody or Cody's question, but I tried.
What? Nothing better than a good 4-way.
I knew you were not going to let that go. It was right there. It was really, really obvious. And I thought, well, look, maybe it's too obvious. Maybe Jerry's going to leave that one alone.
We try to make this a family show.
I have something I want to say. I'm just not going to do it. Okay, go ahead.
Proud members of the Gateway Network. How were you recruited into the Dice Tower cult? Did it occur in were you blindfolded and driven to a Motel 6? And then while you were in a dark room, you heard the components spill out. This is just a story I was told. I don't know. This was on Reddit.
Flashing images of dice and hats coming at you in a blinking fashion.
This is what I was read on Reddit. It said you were blindfolded, placed in the back of a 2006 Ford Taurus, driven to a motel. I don't know how they knew that. Driven to a Motel 6.
A moleskin tail.
Yes. And then you were made to place your hand inside a box and feel of just the components and be able to identify the game within the box. Is that true, or what's is the rest of the story? It gets really convoluted there, and it involves Jason Levine. But what how exactly were you recruited into the family?
No, you just said it. That was exactly how it happened. No, actually, I was a little disappointed because I was hoping for the windowless white van, but it turns out that it was just a minivan, and there were plenty of windows. So I was a little bit disappointed. And it wasn't even a blindfold; it was a bandana, and I saw right through it. I knew exactly where we were going, and it was a Red Roof Inn. Again, disappointed.
Continental breakfast.
Well. Yeah, continental breakfast, but I had to do the component test first, and it took me 3 tries.
So did Tom just approach you, or did he just know of you? Did you beg him through a series of emails?
So do you mean as far as getting the current job that I have now?
Yes. How did you obtain employment through the Dice Tower?
Got it.
And
so
who did you have to suck up to?
Oh, very nicely done. I'm going to have to, I'll make this the I'm going to show my age again here. The Reader's Digest version, the very short version. I had been doing a segment. Do you see my kitty behind me? I had been doing a board game breakfast.
Cats are my kryptonite. I'm completely distracted now.
This is one of the Dice Tower kittens, by the way. I know your listeners can't see her, but this is Raven. She is one of the progeny of the kitties that were in the back, and the mother of Raven and Pip, who's sitting over there, has now got another litter ready to go. She's gotten pregnant yet again. Basically, we've become a mini Tiger King compound at the Dice Tower. So anyway, I got the job. I knew Tom because I had been doing segments for Board Game Breakfast for a couple of years, doing my solo mode segments about solo gaming. And I had worked at Dice Tower booths as a volunteer for a few years, both at Gen Con and at Origins, because I was living in Indianapolis, right? You see the cat tail. And so I knew Tom by working at the booths and by doing segments. And so I honestly think, and I think Tom has even said as much, that had I not done that, had I not worked at those booths and shown a work ethic, because quite honestly, I really, I loved working those booths and I took it seriously and I think I did a decent job at it. So he knew who I was. He kind of had a background on what I was doing. And I also, if I'm patting myself on the back here a little bit, I took the initiative when I heard that Sam was leaving. I emailed Tom. Before, it wasn't like he was putting out a call at that point. I emailed Tom and I said, look, I don't know exactly what's happening there. I don't know if you already have things in mind, but I know that Sam is going to be leaving the Dice Tower, and I just would like to let you know that I'm open to a discussion about opportunities if there are any available. And that's really how it happened. I emailed him. He emailed me back. We started talking. Then we started talking on the phone. And there was a lot to discuss because I was a teacher for almost 20 years and, I had a lot in Indiana. I had my wife and my children and there was just a whole lot to kind of navigate and negotiate, navigate to just practical matters. And so, it just was an opportunity that was, it's still to me to this day is hard to kind of fathom and wrap my mind around. I wasn't necessarily looking to leave Indiana at that point just because of all of the connections I had there. But this was just an opportunity that I had to pursue. And so that's how it happened.
Most school teachers do have an intense love for the children that they teach, and I'm glad you did not allow that love to outweigh your love of board games, and you were able to leave that inner city school and pick up, and apparently even your wife, and to come to the tip of Florida. And I wouldn't use the word abandon, but I'm sure you were. No. They replaced you when you're at your previous job at Indiana Cornfield High.
So here's the thing. I'm gonna try to salvage my already in tatters, shredded reputation as much as I can. I was already actually looking to
much like your short shorts at Heads and Tails.
Correct. I was looking to transition out of teaching already because. And I know I'm putting the best face on this, so take this with a grain of salt if you must. But I really was looking to transition out of teaching because I was at a point where I knew that if I kept going, that I had the danger of becoming one of those teachers that was just showing up to collect a check. And I refused to do that because that's a job. Teaching is a job where if you're having a bad day, that's fine. You know what I mean? The kids are, especially in high school, are going to kind of get that. But if you have lost your passion for the job and you are just showing up, they know it. And what you're doing now is you're not just affecting the 2 or 3 people closest to you in the cubicles, you're affecting 150 kids every day, right? They know you don't want to be there. They know you don't care. And that annoys them, understandably. And so I was at a point where I was like, look, I'm not burned out now, but I know that I'm getting there. I know I'm getting close. And so I had already made a resume that had nothing to do with board gaming. You know, I kind of thought, okay, well, what are the things I'm going to transition to? And I had some things in mind. So I had made a resume. I was already looking to get out. And then when this happened, I almost felt like the universe was trying to tell me something. When this, you know, Dice Tower kind of transition happened, I felt like, okay, well, look, maybe something's being put out there and I need to at least put my hat in the ring, so to speak. And so, you know, I don't have a lot of sympathy for teachers that are burnt out and stay in the job. Honestly, figure it out or get a different job, because those kids don't deserve somebody just showing up every day, you know?
Then you end up like me, a personal shopper at Walmart, because my teachers gave up on me.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like, now you got me all fired up. Do you feel like the majority of your teachers in, let's say, high school, do you feel like the majority of your teachers in high school were passionate about their job?
No.
Yeah, I can answer that. I was homeschooled, so my teacher was my mother, and she hated me. And I agree with most of what you said, because as someone who was homeschooled, I view your previous vocation as being completely useless, because it worked fine for me being at home. And my wife now homeschools our 2 children, and I mean, of course, we, you know, and that's not because we feel like, well, maybe it is because we feel like that the school system in our particular area, you know, we live in southeastern Oklahoma, so there are so few quality schools or schools at all that
right.
When you have, you know, we don't have a history teacher with a degree in history. We got Coach Jefferson, who's, you know, basketball season's off, and I show up to history class and he just plays the Last of the Mohicans and says, there you go, watch this.
That was actually my next question, Mike, is what did you coach in school?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you asked that. Because I tell you what, that's a stereotype for a reason, because it's overwhelmingly true. I did not coach. I was never a coach. And I almost wore that as a badge of pride. Nothing against coaches, but you're absolutely right. The social studies department is almost overwhelmingly the coaches, right? It's the athletic department masquerading as a history department, or as a social studies department. But I also want to be clear that I'm not anti-teacher by any means, because the thing is, I also worked with a lot of fantastic people that did give a you-know-what about their job. It's just that 1 or 2 bad teachers can really, really, really mess things up for a lot of kids. And so I just feel like it's a job that has such a huge impact potentially that you want some good ones in there. So anyway, I know we've gotten onto a teacher talk here, but no, I did not coach, sir. I did not coach.
Well, and I don't think you should feel bad for not being athletic enough or having the knowledge base to be able to coach volleyball. There is a skill to it, and to coach and to inspire people and to really formulate. I've watched Friday Night Lights like 8 times.
Have you?
I have never played football once in my life, but every time I see that show, it inspires me.
Have you watched Last Chance U on Netflix?
I have not.
You need to. It's fantastic. Okay, that's a community college show about community college football. Go ahead.
You're a documentary watcher.
I'm a huge
Did you watch the? My wife just watched all the episodes of the newest. I don't know how new it is. The Challenger. There's a documentary on Netflix about Challenger.
About
very interesting.
Challenger, the
shuttle. The shuttle. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Now I'm intrigued.
She said it was very, very good, very interesting.
Is it a series or is it just one documentary?
I think it's like 4 episodes.
Okay.
And they're about 40 to an hour long, I think. Oh. I didn't watch it because I am the opposite. I can't handle documentaries.
Oh.
They're usually over a subject matter that is depressing to me.
Sure.
Or It's just, I don't know. I'm just put on Star Wars or Star Trek and let me watch that, and that's just what I prefer.
Before we move on off that, real quickly, I had a game down that we were going to play briefly. Gabi,
Mike, a game. I'm excited.
Yes,
a game.
Well, yeah, but you remember the mascot of your school, no doubt. Don't say it.
Okay. The one I taught at, correct?
The one you taught at. Gabi,
okay.
Can you guess? Do you have a pen? Can you write down the mascot of Mike's school?
Is he just taking a wild guess?
Write it down?
Just take a wild guess.
Wow.
It's in Indiana, so there's not that many animals out there. So which animal could it be? It's obviously an animal. It wouldn't be like the Indiana corn husk or something of that nature, or the Indiana meth lab. I've got my answer down. Gabi, do you have your answer written down?
Hold on.
This is much
Gabi,
more exciting.
I feel like you've been quiet, Jerry. I think Gabi's been a little quiet this episode.
Well, Jerry's won't shut up, and he's apparently been well prepared, which is throwing me completely off.
Look. Admit it, Gabi. You are intimidated by the moleskin, aren't you?
As soon as I saw him break that out, I can't get it out of my
Anytime he
thoughts.
starts to speak, I flash the skin up on the screen, and that makes
he
sure
flashes the moleskin. Yeah.
Gabi, do you have your answer?
I put fighting cornworms.
I put beaver. How close are we? Beaver.
Neither of you are even anywhere in the universe. It's not an animal.
Mm.
Oh.
Let me give you a hint. You'll still never
Pirates.
get it. Let me give you a hint. This word, this mascot, is both a noun and a verb. A noun and a verb. Huh?
So it vibrates.
And it refers to a human being. It's a noun and a verb that refers to a human being.
Refers to a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Cornhusker. Because husking is a verb.
You're closer to Nebraska than Indiana was.
That's what the Indiana.
I can't think.
I don't know what's Indiana.
That
starts with a P, ends with Ioneer.
Okay.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
what
not
did they pioneer in Indiana?
I wrote down pianist. So it's not the Indiana pianist. Oh,
is pianist a verb? A noun? I guess it would be.
It's descripted and it's
a verb. Be a verb.
Have you never pianist? I have.
When I'm doing my content creation, I like to pianist. Yeah.
Well, it's just part of it. So I think we have. Oh, Gabi, do you have anything else in terms of questions or things that you wanted to talk about? I'm sorry, I do realize I've been hogging the overall conversation mainly because
no. Well, I mean, you had your thing going down, so I'm often let's see, what's the term? Not accused. You like to get all bent out of shape when I interrupt you, and I thought I'd attempt to let there be a smoother podcast, but you see what happens when I do not interrupt, like literally. And Jerry comes in the show, I'm tired, been doing this all day. Literally has not shut up the whole show because I've tried not to interrupt, and this is what we get. But it's fine. And also, Mike's, you've been talking about, your thing at Dice Tower, so I'm fine with it. I was going to say, I really don't have anything, so that's also part of the reason. But I was just going to ask, does your wife Timothy enjoy gaming at all?
Does Timothy, do you enjoy gaming at all? Oh, I think she's got her headphones in.
You have a show called SoloMode, so I just kind of figured.
Well, here's the thing. Tiffany does like gaming. She likes video games, and she does like board games, but not to the level of hobby board gaming. So she's got her favorite games that she plays. Her big thing is she doesn't like learning new games. She's not cult of the new in any way. She's very much, she knows what she likes.
That's exactly how Gina is.
Yeah, she likes, Waterdeep. She likes Yggdrasil. She likes, her core games. And if she only learns one game a year, that's perfectly fine for her. You know what I mean? Even maybe not even that. She just, that's not her. The cult of the new, like me, is not her thing. And so I've become, very careful about not trying to push that because, that's just not what she's into. So, and I am fine with playing, a game that we both know and like already. So,
well, what is she into though? What are Miss DiLisio's hobbies?
Well,
and how did she feel about you coming to the Dice Tower?
She
uprooting
was
your life.
Yeah, no, she was remarkably supportive of it. She encouraged me to take this risk because honestly, I had some crises of confidence right beforehand. I was struggling with the decision. I was going back and forth on, am I being crazy? I'm going from something that has a whole lot of security and years of service and a pension and all of these things. And she was remarkably supportive. I literally could not have done it without her support. So, she was fantastic about it. She's got.
Did you have Tom slide across the desk? Did you have Tom slide across the desk a number?
He did not.
You look at it slowly.
He did not slide it across the desk because we were thousands of miles apart at the time that the numbers were
Or did he
discussed.
show up at your door with a big sweepstakes check? I said, Mike, come on down.
He showed up. He showed up at the front door with a large bouquet of balloons and the Publishers Clearinghouse folk and presented me with a oversized check. Now my name was misspelled, so I was a little concerned for legal matters that it would actually clear, but it turns out it was all fine.
Do you find the Florida man persona to be accurate?
I personally do not, because I have not run across, I think in the area that we're in. So Florida, what little I know of it, and I would never speak as somebody that is knowledgeable of Florida, as somebody who's lived not only here for less than a year, but somebody who's lived in the time of COVID where you're stuck in your house, and as somebody who really has not explored much outside of the very southern tip, as Jerry likes to call, of Florida. But the area that I'm in is a very diverse, and I mean, you can't get much more south in the United States than where we're at right now. We are exit 2 on the Florida Turnpike, meaning that there's one more exit before us, and then you're in the Florida Keys, which is 90 miles from Cuba. So we are the southernmost part of the United States. At least I believe so. I don't want to get called on this, but I believe so. So the area that we're in doesn't fit that Florida man kind of persona stereotype. I think that the Florida man, quote unquote, thing is more, I don't even want to say it. I get the impression at least that it's more towards the Panhandle area.
My understanding is it's more up towards the northern or central part of Florida, not just the tip in your area.
Sure. Correct.
I know we had you're probably, and most of our listeners are aware of Enrique, and he's not been able to be on our podcast simply because he doesn't have a microphone.
He got infected with a brain-eating amoeba, but sadly it starved to death.
Was he in Houston recently? Have you heard about this? That's horrifying.
Yes. We sent Enrique down there so that they would all die out of starvation.
You sent him there to do some field testing?
Let's have this man drink all the amoebas and get rid of them.
Well, you're about to be sorely mistaken on that, because I texted Enrique earlier and asked him if you were to ask questions to Mike DiLisio, what questions would you ask?
After he said who?
Number one, who?
Well, I can assure you, Enrique has never, two things. He's never listened to our podcast, and two, he has never listened to a Dice Tower video. But he sent back 4 questions for which I must ask you.
That's impressive, Enrique.
Yes.
Wow.
So, the first 2 questions are both board game related, and so I'd like to ask those first.
Sure.
It says, he wants to ask and he misspelled all this, what their favorite broad game is. Broad game genre. Broad game.
What is your favorite broad game?
So what is your favorite broad game genre?
I feel like I'm on an episode of Mad Men with this broad comment. Okay, first of all, I just would like to state that we're 56 minutes in, which is already, the length of 2 of your typical podcasts? 56 minutes in, I believe this is the first time we've mentioned board games in any way whatsoever. My favorite broad
No,
game...
we haven't. We've mentioned broad games.
Right. My favorite broad game...
This one, the dames will love them, see?
Yeah, here's what I like, see?
Yeah, here you go. There's a broad game for you.
Yeah, here you go, you dirty rat. My favorite would be what I call, and what other people have called, hybrid, which is basically it is Euro mechanisms with more of a Amerithrash type of theme. So I don't know, things like Blood Rage or Scythe, things that kind of have those Euro underpinning mechanics, but have more of a thematic bent feel to them.
Underpinning is popular in Southeast Oklahoma with the trailers.
Right. Now, underpinning is something that, I haven't done for a number of years, but back in my times of Head or Tails, I was pretty well known for my underpinning.
What? Next question. I'm recovering from that underpinning. I had like 3 different things I was about to say about that. None of them are.
That's where one of his piercings is.
Well, I didn't want to say it. I'm glad you did.
Undercarriage.
Sure.
Then he would ask what broad game they like the most in that genre. So what broad game do you like most in the hybrid genre?
Well, the last time I did a list, my favorite board game was Scythe, and I know that's kind of a boring answer because I've mentioned it so much, but I'll stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
I still love Scythe. I just got the app. The app just came out for the iPad, and so the thing is, though, I think that's one game that I'm still going to always prefer to play in person. So it would be Scythe. It would be my favorite.
Okay. In his next text message, he says, "Ask the," and in quotation marks, "what is something that everyone looks stupid doing?" Unquote.
Ask the what is. Yes.
So
what is something
that
okay
that everyone looks stupid doing?
Power walking.
I had the same thought. You cannot power walk or even jog for that matter.
Well, jogging, you can have a jaunty lilt to your jog. Jaunty lilt. But you can't, with a power walk, there's no way to do that and look good.
I was power walking just this afternoon in part of my weight loss journey.
Sure.
And there's a certain track in town. It's a mile loop. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's not a mile loop. I don't know who measured it. Someone that went to school here. It's like 0.97, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just shy of a mile. Mm-hmm. But that's not the point. So I'm jogging, and I'm just now beginning to get where I can jog. I've lost enough weight where I can get it going.
Seriously,
and I've been getting my what's that, cardio enough where I can maintain a jog for enough where I'm not wheezing. However, it tends to stir up the fluids and the juices in my head, and I'm like runny nose. I'm hacking up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I have earbuds in. I'm like, listening to the latest Sporadically Board podcast, and it's blasting in my ears.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there, and I take a rag with me to wipe the brow of my head, wipe the sweat, and I've got all this stuff going on. So I'm like, I look around every now and then, but at this particular moment, I had my earbuds in, and I'm just blowing my nose. I'm hacking. I like spit, just like, it's disgusting.
I gotta tell you, you're really painting a picture with these words. Go ahead.
I'm the typical fat, sweaty, disgusting man. And as soon as I blow my nose, I'm like, and I literally say aloud to myself, I'm like, good Lord. Here comes this a young gal jogs right beside me that I never heard coming, and she's an attractive person.
I wonder what this
myself.
gal's favorite broad game is. Go ahead.
I said, "There's a nice looking broad, see." But and then she jogged immediately past me, and I was just ashamed of my my fatness, my sweatiness, my snottiness, and I didn't look around before I did all these things. So then she jogs past me for a good way. She's like getting away from me.
Sure.
But But then she stops at a certain point. She stops her jog and she's just walking. Well, I'm still trucking along in my very slow paced jog, but it is slightly faster than a walk.
Sure.
So I do get within, a good distance of her. And lo and behold, she picks up the pace once again and takes off from me.
She sensed your presence. Okay, gotcha.
She sensed me. So yeah, it was quite the sight, and I was quite embarrassed. But I'm not the only large man out there. And when I do see large people out there, I like to keep it going. You got it, type of guy.
Job. I've got a couple of follow-up.
I cheer my people on. Okay.
On this track, are there lanes? Are there actual defined lanes on this track?
No, it's a dirt trail with like minuscule gravel, type thing on it.
Would you say that this jogger, this gal, would you say that she took a wide berth?
A dame.
Dame. Would you say that she took a wide berth? A wide berth.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, you kind of have to. You have to take a wide berth to just get around me.
Not anymore. You're dropping weight like nobody's business, Gobby. That's fantastic.
Oh, speaking of, Sir Dan Hughes publicly has conceded
he has.
All of 2 weeks into it.
I know.
And so I assume that I am now the co-host of Sporadically Board.
That's how it works, I believe. Yeah. But you need to keep going, man.
I thought that was the deal.
I think you should still kind of feel like you've got that competition, so that any motivation that can keep you going, because I think it's fantastic.
I'm trying. It's hard.
It is.
I went to the store today, and I'm trying to cut back on my alcohol consumption. But I've noticed that when I do that, I want to snack and replace that. So I went and bought like some sodas and some Little Debbies. But I told my wife I just want one. Just one.
Yeah. It's hard. I had lost about 65 pounds within the last, 4 years. I don't remember exactly when it's been. And the people that had seen, that knew me before and after I'd lost the weight, everyone always wants to know, okay, so what did you do? What did you do? And I think a lot of times they're looking for some kind of like something, right? Some magic,
the magic peel.
Right. And my thing was always, you have to tell yourself no hundreds of times a day. Like literally.
Yes.
You have to tell yourself no hundreds of times a day, because look, do I always want an entire loaf of Italian bread? Yes. At any given time of the day, I always want an entire loaf of Italian bread. Do I always want an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream? Abso-freaking-lutely. I always want an entire, you know what I mean? And so it's just, it's that whole thing of, to me, for the longest time, I felt like I couldn't do it. Like there was just something like, I just don't have the willpower. I'm not capable of doing it. But then once I finally got to the point where I knew I didn't have that excuse anymore. And it was just a matter of, I'm choosing not to. That was the hardest thing is being honest with myself and saying, okay, if I'm heavier than I want to be, it's because I'm choosing to be heavier than I want to be. And I know that there are other people out there in the world that's not the case. They've got, physical reasons, thyroid issues, whatever the case may be, that they don't have that luxury. But for me, I never had that excuse. It was, if I'm overweight, it's because I'm choosing to be overweight. You know what I mean? So, and most of my life, I chose to be overweight. So
yeah, I come from big people. So it is kind of a genetic thing, but at the same time, I indulge myself. I find that my portion sizes usually shock other people. When I get that plate of spaghetti.
Sure.
And I drink a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper.
Sure.
Apparently that's not normal.
Well, you're a tall guy too, though, right? You're not short.
I'm like right at around 6.
Okay.
I'm not super tall.
I should share you guys. I should send you guys some pictures of me when I was heavier. People usually freak out.
Please do. It will make a great addition to both the podcast thumbnail and our Facebook group. The fourth question, and I'm glad Enrique's question enlisted such heartfelt advice and storytelling regarding your previous weight loss issues. His fourth question was, What is the most embarrassing thing you have ever worn?
The most embarrassing thing I have ever worn?
I'm assuming he's asking for like an article of clothing.
Wow.
Or
this is difficult, but the only thing I can think of is I would imagine that at some point I owned a fanny pack. I'm old enough that I probably at some point owned a fanny pack. So I will go with that. Although I don't specifically remember owning a fanny pack, I probably
Were they
did.
wrapped around your Maurice Francois Gerbeau pants?
No, they were around my Vidal Sassoon or Jordache jeans. I can't remember which of the two. One of the
Or
two.
guess. Jordache.
Jordache.
Wow.
Oh, no. It was,
that's good.
Jordache, Vidal Sassoon, or what was the other one? I can't remember. Those are the only two I can remember. I had a members only jacket. I did have a members only jacket.
I had one of those Steve Harvey suits that goes down to your ankle and has 18 buttons. And it was
Nice.
silver and had like this very odd seersucker, but not seersucker pattern.
Yeah.
That I imagined it being the coolest thing ever. And I
Mhm.
Like you were in the 40s?
Oh yeah, it was awesome. And I
Zoot
thought
suit.
that looked good. Yeah, and my skin was so pale that I was not yeah. So that was probably
And you were constantly talking like the old-timey guy.
Yeah, see?
No,
23 skidoo.
You were good, kid. Real good. As long as I'm around, you'll be second best, see?
well,
Weren't you just saying you
Enrique-
just watched Casablanca, Gabi? Was that right?
That's true. I did.
There you go. You know, you brought up Steve Harvey, and a lot of people may only know Steve Harvey from the Family Feud, the new Family Feud. You know, I will tell you this: I saw the comedians in cars getting coffee with Jerry Seinfeld, that series that he did. The one that he did with Steve Harvey was possibly the best one I've ever seen. Steve Harvey is a funny dude. You wouldn't necessarily know it by some of the stuff he does because, man, the guy's going to collect a paycheck, right? He's not going to turn down a job.
He's mostly just doing like reaction shots.
Right,
on
right. But
whatever that show
he
is
could
called,
be
I
a funny
forget.
dude. I was very, very impressed with that episode.
I remember Steve Harvey back in the day when he and several, I think it was Bernie Mac and Cedric.
Oh yeah,
Entertainer.
the Kings of Comedy.
Yeah, the Kings of Comedy. That was a hilarious.
It was great.
Comedy special. That was
Yep.
awesome. Steve Harvey did that bit where somebody in the front row left their jacket, and he got. I mean, there was just
great.
a lot of stuff about that. That was amazing
Yeah.
special.
That was really good. Yeah. Bernie Mac and Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, and who was
Was
the
it
fourth?
D.L. Hughley?
What was
Yeah,
that?
it was D.L.
D.L. Hughley. That's right. Yeah, that was great.
Yes.
That was great.
Yeah, DL got COVID not long back and recovered.
Is that right? I did not know that.
Yes, passed out on stage. I really like stand-up comedians.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a weird statement. I really like stand-up comedians.
I really like stand-up
but-
just in general.
Just
do
in
as well.
general.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't
This is a
like
general
listening to
statement of
them.
fact.
I don't like their comedy, but I just like to be introduced to
I
them.
like them as human beings.
Yeah, they're good people. They're good people.
You
Well,
seem like you're a nice guy. You seem like a funny guy.
Now, I don't find your humor funny. I don't find your act funny, but I like you as a person.
all right, Mike.
I always find it interesting that most, I don't know how, this, again, stereotype. The stereotype of most stand-up comedians, especially like the classic ones, is that they're not really funny like in real
They're
life.
not great to be around. Yeah.
Right. They have like these dark stories and depression and mental issues.
Yes.
And I always found that interesting that
too.
they can go that, but yet they're good writers of comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people have said that a lot of comedy comes out of pain. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's why our podcast is so funny. Is because
Sure.
both me and Gambi are just basically in a pit of despair and suffering.
Correct.
Both.
And it shows through the podcast. Yeah.
I'm glad it does. Mike, who's your favorite comedian off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, oh my gosh, I probably would. God, I'm thinking Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
I think he is just, I mean, not as a stand-up, but as a writer.
Yes.
I think he's brilliant. I mean, I just think he is a brilliant writer. I love Steve Martin. I love Jerry Seinfeld, believe it or not, as a I loved his show and I love him as a stand-up. Richard Pryor. I don't know. There's just I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy. My oldest son wants to be a stand-up comic, and he is a good student of stand-up comedy. I don't know. It's too many to mention, honestly. I think that there's just that's a skill that I really admire. I really think that they are the ones that are good at it. Are almost mesmerizing to me. Like they almost like put you in a trance. They're so good. You know what I mean? Their timing, the way they set up a joke. And there are so many different types. You've got the people that tell the one-liners like Rodney Dangerfield and does that so well. And then you've got other people, like Stephen Wright, where you have to like wait 45 seconds before you get the joke. And then you've got other people that are storytellers, and do it so well that way, like Richard Pryor. So it's just hard to say. I mean, Dave Chappelle's fantastic. There's just, I don't know.
Then you got Carrot Top.
Then you have Carrot Top, and you've got Sinbad, who also is right there on the precipice of greatness. And you have Gallagher, not just Gallagher, but Gallagher too, his estranged brother, who tried to take over his act once he got sick, I think. Yeah. So many options.
That's where the band Smashing Pumpkins got their idea from.
I don't think one who begins their videos with the dumping out of components should be making fun of somebody who smashes watermelons. That's something that I've seen more people comment about that component dump on the Dice Tower.
Yeah, you know what though? The fact that people are talking about it, I think, is all you need to say. Because
exactly.
Right. Who did it before? Nobody. Who's done it after? Yeah. Nobody. Because if you do, you're going to be a pretender. Look. Right. It's such a silly thing, but no one else did it.
I have often thought of if I ever decide to branch into YouTube videos, to start each one of my reviews with me putting components back in the box.
Yes.
Just as a nice reversal, kind of like the whole Tenet back in time type thing. I think that, and going back to Mr. Vassal and the Dice Tower to kind of just hammer this point in, I've always thought in my mind that Tom was an excellent businessman. And not only how he has set up the Dice Tower, but the content.
Do you have a migraine?
I do have a migraine. I'm trying to close my eyes without making it obvious. Gabi always makes fun of me that when we used to do the podcast live, I would close my eyes whenever I'm thinking of something important to try
when he
to
gets in deep discussion, he takes his glasses off, closes his eyes, and starts rubbing them.
It's very dramatic. Right. I mean, this is a moment we're having here. Yeah,
it's very dramatic. Well, just like Horatio did on CSI Miami.
When I put my glasses back on, that's when the music plays. Which Horatio was in the tip of my Florida too, wasn't he?
Indeed, he was.
Dade County.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Dade, Dade.
I am in Dade County right now.
I happen in place. I ate a Cabano sandwich there.
Cubano sandwich. It's delicious.
Changed my life.
Yes.
I came home and tried to make one. I have not been able to replicate it since.
It's difficult to replicate. If you get a panini maker, you can get close, but it's still not the same as if you have a good, press.
What's a panini? I think we may have to edit that out. Is that like a pianist? Like an Italian pianist? A
panini is like an Italian version of a Cubano sandwich. The difference with a panini with a Cubano is that with a Cubano, it doesn't have grill like Mark's, because it doesn't have the grooves like a normal grill, like a Foreman grill has those grill marks. Paninis are like those Foreman grills where they'll leave indentations in the bread. In a Cubano, it's not going to necessarily have those indentations. It's just going to be pressed between griddle type things.
And you don't want to get your panini caught in a George Foreman grill.
You don't. It will end you up in the ER in a heartbeat.
You'll be making journals out of it in no time.
Back to Tom Vassal. Not only is he a good businessman, but I had a question. Does he have a closet or a room for all those god awful hats and ties? Does he have a wardrobe that he enters into? Is it like a pole like Batman that he slides down and he comes out dressed in this flamboyant?
Sure.
Or does he, I understand that he keeps a certain wardrobe, and I find it fascinating because that wardrobe with the component dump has a certain flair, I guess you could say.
It's iconic. It is iconic.
It's iconic. It is iconic. That's the word I would
flair, like they wear at Chili's and TGIF.
Yes, he has his 14 different pieces of flair on.
Do they wear flair at Chili's, though? I don't know that they do. Do they?
Yeah, a little bit.
You got a little flair at Chili's?
It's been so long since I've been to a Chili, so I don't remember.
Yeah,
in the South here, they don't have flair. They just have face tattoos, and that counts as their flair.
Yeah, 15 face tattoos, yeah.
How many teardrops you have, that's how many times you've dropped a platter as you were coming out. How many onion blossom dips you dropped.
Are you anti-face tattoo?
It's not that I'm against face tattoos, and I don't want to offend Roy or anybody else in the Dice Tower that might have a face tattoo. I don't watch the Dice Tower.
Multiple tattoos.
But I'm just saying that
it's not that I'm he just flashed it to you, but your eyes were closed and you didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know. It's just that we live in the Deep South, and there is a certain connotation with piercings and tattoos that has been around for years.
Sure.
And it's just now that it's becoming more acceptable. Like
mainstream.
I firmly believe, and mind you, my father being a drill sergeant thought that certain types of tattoos were fine, but anybody else that had tattoos were looked down upon. That mindset has changed. And now, and that's another thing I wanted to bring out with the board game breakfast and many other different aspects of the Dice Tower.
Broad game breakfast. That's going to be the name of our show.
That's on our show, the Broad Game Breakfast.
Coming soon.
Yes.
Coming soon to the Gateway Network, the Broad Game Breakfast.
Coming soon, see? Yeah.
Yeah. That's not sexist at all.
No. Look at the gams on this one.
Gams. Nice.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't even know what a gam is.
It's a leg. It's a leg, Jerry.
It is? I'm not that old. Is that what they used to call it? Okay.
They called legs gams.
I think that's just the ankles.
Some nice walking sticks on that one, say.
I hadn't heard that. Okay.
That's how I lured my wife, by the way, by that talking just like that.
I can understand that, Jerry. Gabi, because that is irresistible. I mean, I'm ready to propose right now.
It's not machismo or sexist at all. It's just
genuine appreciation. Yes,
genuine. I mean, who doesn't like to be told you have a nice pair of walking sticks,
especially on a good hike? Go ahead, Jerry. You were trying to make a very, very important point.
I think that the Dice Tower.
He thinks every point he makes is important.
Of content, and it's good for people who are just entering the hobby, and of course most of them move on afterwards after they kind of get into the hobby, which I think that's just fine. But I've often appreciated that the Dice Tower is a nice foundation for the board gaming hobby for people to get started in, and once their tastes have matured, to kind of. And I'm not saying that everybody moves on from the Dice Tower. I'm saying that most people do stick around because obviously y'all have the ginormous Kickstarter and all these other, conventions and things and people sending Tom hats and even myself, even though I'm not a particular consumer of Dice Tower content, I do have a soft spot in my heart for Jason Levine, aka the Phantom of the Dice Tower. That's how I like to think of him.
Soft spot in the heart. You should get that checked out. Is that your potassium?
My potassium has been very low here lately. Matter of fact, I am getting that checked Tuesday.
Ooh.
But
how do they check that? Through the rectum?
Yes, that's exactly how they do that.
I think, I don't understand how, I got something going on in the brain. Well, time to go through the rectum and check it out.
That's not, it's through an artery. You don't actually go through the rectum for very few things in terms of, you are a side.
Well, then I've been going to the wrong doctor.
We need to check your hemoglobin.
Every time. Everything's through the rectum for some reason.
Well, there's a direct route.
But either way, the Dice Tower and its various content creators and its variety, I've always appreciated, even though I have just been a fanboy of. And I mean, honestly, when I got back into the board gaming hobby many years ago, it was the Dice Tower that I stumbled across. Interestingly enough, I love the fact that on Board Game Geek, it keeps your history when you first come in.
Right.
And I was looking back at the dates of I could recall what brought me back into the board gaming hobby and how I went down this trail and what I was looking at the time. And that led to a Dice Tower video and, of course, a top 10 video and things of that nature. And so
mine is very cliche. Like, I just think, like, my brother-in-law brought in Settlers of Catan.
Yep.
I'd never heard of it. We played it. I was blown away. And I can't even remember when I first saw, like, the Dice Tower, but man, I was hooked. Top 10s. And then they had that one where it's like the Essentials, like the one of theirs that hit the million or whatever, like first. And I just basically went through there and bought every one of those games.
I mean, that's similar to me in that, you know, Catan was my entryway. I don't remember how I got turned on to Dice Tower, probably through BGG. But I was in a similar situation where I pretty much consumed everything I could, anything I was interested in. It likely had a Dice Tower video. Then I got into the top 10s. You know, it's about the personalities for me. I just kind of got hooked by the personalities, and that was all it took.
Which is
I always did prefer the top. I always preferred watching the top 10 list because I liked, you know, the interactions between Z, Sam, and Tom.
Absolutely.
Which is very interesting now because you are a content creator and we are content creators and we consume your content and you consume our content. We're just like some big human centipede type thing where we're just consuming each other's content. It's just such wonderful and proud members of the Gateway Network.
And I'm glad you brought that up right after the rectum discussion. Yes.
You're welcome. I know how to drive the conversation home.
Oh, you do. Yes. You drive it home.
We're now moving on into our, and I have not stolen this.
Our few yards of garbage?
Yes, our few yards of garbage. Now, I know that
we should just rename our podcast A Few Yards of Garbage.
Sure.
No, it should be called Periodically Disinterested.
That was the original title, but we decided against it. Sure.
So, in a few yards of garbage, and I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is the segment for which we talk about things that are not board game related, because we know our fans like to hear things outside of the board gaming milieu. And
Flavian,
Flavian. And so, Gabi, do you have any? No, Gabi hasn't been prepared for this. I'm sure.
What?
Mike,
have you ever heard of bestlife.com?
What is it?
If you want interesting facts, I encourage you to look up bestlife.com. An amazing website full of all sorts of weird and interesting facts that you may not have heard before.
I'm intrigued.
Mike, do you have anything of interest outside of the board game milieu?
I was absolutely unprepared for this. Let's see. Let me think. Are you calling it a few yards of garbage?
Yes.
All right. Few yards of garbage. What's something I could bring up? What have I been? Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been the only thing I've been doing outside. I've been watching my documentaries, Gabi. I'm watching documentaries. I'm playing.
Have you seen Cobra Kai?
What's that?
Cobra Kai. Have you seen Cobra Kai?
No, you know what? I have to tell you, I'm being a little bit obstinate. I'm being a little bit obstinate because everyone's going crazy. And the thing is, I loved the Karate Kid. I really did like the original Karate Kid.
I was too.
I for some reason, I've been hesitant. I've kind of been resistant to watching it. I don't know why.
I watched the trailer when it came out on YouTube, and I watched the trailer, and to me, it looked like the cheesiest thing ever.
Yeah. Sure.
But I listened to a Slash Film Daily. It's a podcast out of L.A. They're like movie TV critics and stuff. And the main guy, Peter Soretta, he talked about Cobra Kai like nonstop. He was touting Cobra Kai, and I was like, I saw that preview. It looks so terrible. I'm hooked.
Wow.
I mean, it takes the whole thing and flips it to where, you know, Daniel was the underdog, Daniel's son.
Sure.
Now, Johnny's the underdog, and Daniel's the successful guy. And it's just really good. The only thing, they make Johnny like super stuck in the 80s. Like he's just got this, he's non-PC. He's very macho. And he doesn't even know basically like how computers work. that's a little overdone to me, but the overall story, I love the reversal that they've done. So, and they kind of make Daniel like the bad guy, kind of, but he's not really, because if you watch the show, it's like you see both sides of how they remember things, and to me, it's really well done.
All right, well, I will check it out then. I will check it out. I feel like I've been.
And they're only 30 minutes.
Willfully obstinate, Gabi, and that's just not, that's not acceptable. All right, so here's what I'll do. There's two. I'm a big music person. I do enjoy music, but I enjoy music that is stuff that I grew up for. I think a lot of people are like that, right? You know, you like what you grew up listening to, and so there are two albums that came out. And by calling them albums, I'm dating myself. But there were two albums that came out just this last Friday that I've been listening to, and one is by Bob Mould, and it's called Blue Hearts, and he was the leader of Husker Du, which was a punk band back in the day, and it's very good. And then the new Public Enemy album is called What You Gonna Do When the Grid Goes Down, and I think both of those albums are very good from what I've heard so far. So I'll use that as my few yards of garbage.
That explains the piercings.
Yes.
The punk bands.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of Bob Schneider out of Austin, Texas?
Bob Schneider. Wasn't he in B-52s? No, it was a different Schneider. No, I have not. Who's Bob Schneider?
I think he's a pretty big deal down there. I don't think he's gotten much out of that. He might have a hit or two, but he sings a song called Change. Let's see, what's it called? Change. Oh my God. Changing Your Mind.
Okay.
Change your mind. It's something of that effect. Change Your Mind or Changing Your Mind. Bob Schneider.
Bob Schneider.
It literally brings me to tears.
Really?
I don't know. I don't know if I listened to it the first time at a certain emotional moment in my life, and then henceforth every time I listen to it, it makes me think of that.
Right.
But we had some friends over, and I was like, let me play y'all this song. And I had a tear rolling down my cheek as I listened to this song. And even the ending of it is super weird. He puts this super weird twist on the end of the song. But it's a beautiful song. Go ahead.
I'm looking it up right now. I
don't
see the Changing Your Mind. I do see one that's a live song called Ass Knocker. But I don't.
That's a deep track.
Yeah, that's a deep cut.
That's the name of my doctor, by the way.
Oh yeah, Changing Your Mind. I see it. Featuring
Your Mind.
Featuring Patty somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's that version that's live on YouTube is really good as well.
Okay, I would play it, but I don't want to give you a hit for copyright.
I was gonna, as I talked about the tear rolling down my cheek, I had this discussion with Sade and Gina the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that people are embarrassed to cry in front of other people? Why is that?
I am absolutely not embarrassed to cry in front of other people. If something is moving to me, I'll cry. If I'm upset, I'll cry.
Really?
I don't know. I think that. Look, I mean, this is.
I would think that's not the norm, though. Like most people, they're like,
I would venture to say that most men, that would not be the norm. I think women are given the social latitude to cry. Women are not only allowed but are expected to show emotions in that way. I think men, young men especially, are dissuaded from showing that type of emotion. So I think that's really what it's about. I think that we're still socially conditioned as males to not cry.
Do you find yourself getting more emotional as you get older? Because I have.
Yeah. I think, it's weird. I've got this whole weird thing, and I don't want to give too much information here. I've had this weird dichotomy in my life where I feel like I'm an emotional person that's completely not in touch with their emotions, if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel like I'm emotionally intelligent. I don't feel like I'm emotionally, I don't think that I have a really good handle on my emotions, but I think I feel emotions. I just don't think I express them very well, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know.
I get it. I have found myself I don't know if it's just more experiences in life or loss of testosterone or what it is.
Yeah, it could be.
I find myself crying at the drop of a hat these days. So every time Tom comes on and his hat falls off, I end up crying.
Changing your mind.
Should I leave you alone?
We had a moment, Jerry. Let's not ruin it.
I know. This few yards of garbage has turned into a few miles of emotional distress.
Correct.
My few yards of garbage was two things, actually. One was something educational. I had recently subscribed to a website called Blinkist, like Blinkist, IST, which I had never heard of, which is
like blinking with your eyes?
Yeah, Blinkist,
Okay.
which is does summaries of books, not fiction or novels, but rather either self-help books, educational books, history books. And it does the overall synopsis of those books in like 15-20 minutes, and so it kind of gives you an idea of whether you want to go and read the actual book. And I have found that to be very interesting, just listening, because I drive so much and are in an office so much, being able to hear various subjects and topics. And I started off by actually downloading the short synopsis of books for which I've already had read to see if they did a good job on giving that synopsis and preview of it. And it's been really interesting. And I had not heard, and I know people have like a terrible attention span at this time, and nobody likes listening to like hour and a half long podcasts, which is why we're gonna have to cut this one up into like 4 parts.
Sure.
My other more lighthearted yards of garbage is something that Gabi said reminded me of this. If you go to YouTube and not Google, but search Martin Freeman, the man which I love, Martin Freeman, and Bruiser, Bruiser. There is a particular skit that Martin Freeman does which he exclaims that I am not a insert whatever it is that he is exclaiming that he is not. And it's a skit where he goes about basically putting himself into socially awkward situations for which you then hear his thoughts as he is trying to work out what his next action should be. And he always ends up making the situation worse, such as he's jogging and there's a woman jogging next to him and he doesn't want to jog close to her. He can't speed up enough to pass her. He doesn't want to seem like he's stalking her, and he's thinking all this in his head. And then he ends up at the very end always screaming out loud that I'm not a stalker or something. And making the situation worse. It is a classic. There's several videos of these as skits of Martin Freeman, which I think Martin Freeman is one of my favorite low-key actors is Martin Freeman.
Is that Morgan's brother?
Yes, it's his white adopted brother, Martin. His British Watson Martin Freeman.
Fantastic.
Yes, fantastic. Well, that's going to have to do it for us because it's like 8 o'clock here in the south. So that must be about probably 9 o'clock there in the tip of Florida.
It's 9 o'clock in the tip. You got it.
Yeah. And you need to get up early in the morning to fluff Tom's hats and bring him his coffee.
It's a whole thing, man. It's a scene, man.
It is. And we would certainly like to thank you for abandoning your calling of a high school teacher.
When winter hits, does Florida get smaller?
Yeah. It just kind of recesses up into the north a little bit. Yeah.
Huh.
It is a thing.
That's a thing. I don't know where to go from there.
Look, I will tell you, I was waiting for the call. I was waiting for the request to come on, and while it took much longer than I expected, it was really it was heartwarming to be asked to come on, and I feel really proud to have been part of the least humorous and least entertaining episode in Board Game Snobs history. So I do appreciate that recognition. That's something to hang my hat on, so to speak.
Yes. Well, we were first waiting for our daily chat invite, but so that was.
Yeah, as I said before, I considered it, but then I wanted to keep my job, so
Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's going to do it, eh?
Sure. I don't know how do you guys end these things? I mean, I've listened to a ton of your podcasts, but
I generally get irate and leave.
Fair. Okay.
Jerry either is like, it gets irritated, or he's got to go to sleep, or his kids show up, or just one of those things, and we just end it.
Okay, fair enough.
We don't have an elegant exit usually.
Yeah, we don't have somebody singing about chlamydia to close us out.
Yeah. Look, you can aspire to it one day. You can aspire to it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Board Game Snobs. Thank you, Sir DiLisio, for coming on.
Let Mike close us out with that silky baritone voice of his and that manly goatee while he tries to hold back a tear.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patronage. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us your time, your attention. Thank you for giving us your love. It's been a joy. It's been a pleasure. It's been something, hasn't it? It has. It's been fun, guys. Thank you for having me on. It really has.
Thank you for listening to the Board Game Snobs. Stay classy.
But I still have holes in my body that could accept a good hot chocolate, then the lawn guys, then the stray cats in the back.